Welcome to our second session, which is about the elements of our system, starting from the sources through the gorges, well, presuming we have gorges, to the plains and the streams out to the front of house speakers. And we're going to do a little bit of walking around here to make this happen. And of course, the objective is to have clear sound reproduction. So let's start off. In this session, what we're going to do is spend more time looking at the sound desk itself. We might look at, to tailor this, what we might do is also look at how it's been left from the last session, because I noticed that there's quite a few things that have been left that are not the way our system's meant to be set up at St James. And so we can that's actually really helpful, because you get to see, okay, well, this is the way sound people will need to sort of adjust their system so that it doesn't cause faults like feedback and all that sort of thing. Why have I got sound from the lectern running through the foldbacks? We'll go through some of that. Maybe we should just, before we do that, actually walk through the river, if you know what I mean. Let's start with the sources and come back to the desk. All right. So, this is our chancel. It's pretty well set up from a WHS perspective. The drum kit's always set up here. The keyboard's always set up here. And we have direct input boxes in three places, sorry, one there. That's specifically for the bass guitar. So it plugs over here into, I think it's channel 10, I could be wrong. And there's a double here. You can see that's a little bit different from that one. This is a double, so it actually has the drum kit plugged into it, and it's capable. Where's that on? It's capable also of taking another instrument. That's guitar 2. So if you trace these cables here, this then connects into the other end of the snake. Perhaps I wasn't quite right here. The female end, sorry to use female, but that's the designation they use. Doesn't look quite the same. It's all in one box here, just to keep it neat. There's a third direct input box here. Actually, no, there are 4, because there's one hidden here in the drum kit for the piano. Yeah, exactly. So, and it's good when it's hidden. No one can break it. It's plugged in there too. It's an oldie. That's actually what they call a passive one. So it's not actually powered. It's receiving 48 volts through the cable, just like everything else is. Even these cables are receiving 48 volts onto, I think it's pin 1, I think. But it just rejects it, doesn't use it, and so it sits there as a passive. It's probably okay here. On a big stage, it would not be suitable. The signal would probably die out, or there'd be faults. So unfortunately, people move this from time to time, and it's not that good. But
maybe we should gaffer tape it then.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So they're the in a way they're the sources. I guess perhaps I could explain. There's an output here. Where is it? This particular cable here, you can see that's the cable there. It runs all the way over to here in channel 2, and then through that back to the desk. Yeah, that's right. And the microphones, for instance, this is microphone 1 here, 2 here, because I know I got them in the right order the other day, 3 here. They all run into... So that's the lectern, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the one back. It's actually in channel 5, believe it or not. It's at the sort of the bass guitarist can sing through it, or the drummer. Yeah. And then this one is actually vocal 5, although we have nothing plugged into it at the moment. Yeah, it looks a little bit like it's number 10, but it's actually number 6. So they're the source. Any questions about the way they work? Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then the next thing is to think about what are we gorges. That's more or less where we go back to the desks. We don't actually have subgroups in this system. Other churches have. I can turn up and down all the instruments from one channel. Yeah. That's what a gorge is, but we're not really doing that here. We sort of do that by separating out the foldbacks. So these are what I'm loosely calling the planes. There's 2 sets, by the way. These are what we have powered speakers here at the front, so they're plugged in here. They need to be turned on there and also turned on themselves. They often get left on, but they're active, whereas these are passive speakers. So they're actually powered by an old box of mine that's about 25 years old. It's called the Yamaha 3500. That's that system, so that's running about 750 watts to power both sides, and so that needs to be activated so that these work. Okay, so that's the planes. Source, we really have the Source is gorgeous in planes, and then I guess it's a little bit contrived because we've kind of had to move back here to do the streams, but they are the streams, the mouth, that's where it really all comes out. And the main part that controls that is this here. I'm just going to get my computer just for a tick, and we'll talk through how that all works. Okay, that's a handy spot for this. Okay. Oh, I've kind of said sources and actually, sorry, I've messed this up a little bit. The gorges are in fact kind of like converting a source into the part that goes down the hill. So for the purpose of this exercise, we're calling that the gorges. Okay, well that's fair enough. So here's gorge one. That's the lectern. In fact, they're all labelled. You can see how they're all labelled, and I think you're familiar with all of them.
Yeah.
Now there are different parts of the gorges that we're using the term gorges. That we should go into a little bit of detail. These are the what do you call them? The male end of the cable, plugging into here, running all the way across the wall, and then down through that cable into here and there. And this has got a little bit of pressure on it at the moment. It needs to be pulled up a little bit. Anyway, the inputs from the instruments, so as the input to the desk, looks like so. That's a microphone input. The default microphone cables. You can, as I was talking about before, plug these in through with what they call an unbalanced cable into the desk. That can be done for short distance. So if I was playing a guitar from here, you could potentially plug it straight into there. It would be a high impedance signal, so you have to do a lot of work here. You can see there's 2 different scales here. One of them is for a line input, and one's for a microphone input. So a line is automatically attenuated on the desk. We don't use them. We also don't use inserts. You might be wondering what insert means. The insert is actually where you can put an effect unit for a particular. So it has an input and an output off a stereo cable. You've probably seen that there's 3 pins on a stereo cable. It plugs into here, and you can actually put a delay on someone's thing. But you wouldn't only really use that if you're live or doing live concerts or something like that. So generally speaking, we don't use them. What's more important, however, is this section here, which is the where we're really adjusting the gorge inputs to make them at a satisfactory level. This is what they call a gain control. Now, there is a bit of a trick to this. You can, just give me a tick. Yes, there's someone to say. Anyway, let's go there in a minute. You can set all channels to figure out, right, are they all running at roughly the same level? The idea is try and get each channel working at roughly the same level so that you can adjust them here and get a bit of a picture here in the sort of like I guess they're a bit like they're a little bit like planes anyway, an output from the instrument to the main mix, and you get a picture of that. If you have all these, what they call, pre-fader, I think they're called pre-fader sends into, and you can have, they're by default, they come into this particular phone.
So should they be on or off for us?
Always off. So you can see how many. You can see how many are on.
Yeah.
Because that's the way they've been set up by someone previously.
Yeah.
But they should be turned off.
So off is up, isn't
That's
it?
right, yeah. So all of them, yep. So you're starting to see how things get changed a lot. What doesn't tend to get changed is the equaliser. Oh, before the equaliser, this is what they call a low-pass filter.
So you skipped over the gain. What does a gain do?
Gain. It enables, beg your pardon, it enables the signals to be, if you had all those peak filters on and you had the headphones on, you'd be hearing them all at roughly the same level. Okay? So, and that's the main aim of the game is try and get them as level as you can. What we normally do is just leave these as is. Of course, they're getting played with a bit. For instance, that would normally be there, etc.
Even these have got some on, some off.
Yeah, that's right. Some of them have been played with. So, and let's go through that. The gains, I don't see a lot of fluctuation. That's probably okay. The bass seems to be a bit high, I think.
Like they're on
Yeah,
and
that's
they're off.
well. Yeah, let's go through that now. A vocal. So when I speak, I'm not speaking at 80 hertz, which is down low, 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 low. So you don't really need to hear what I'm saying at that level in terms of for clarity. So generally speaking, all vocals will have the low pass filter activated because they don't need to hear below 100 hertz. And for reference, this also does the same job. This 80 hertz does the same job, and so it just doubles it up effectively. It creates in fact, you can see here, that's the pattern that knob there does to reduce the signal or increase the signal. So we've got all our vocals here correctly set up. The drums, now, can we think of anything on the drums that would be a low signal that we might want to emphasise?
Well, like the bass drum.
That's exactly right. Yeah, all the toms too. They tend to have quite a lot. So yeah, that's okay. Keyboards, can you think of anything that would be a low set frequency on a keyboard?
Oh, it's the lower notes.
That's right. Yep, absolutely. Guitar.
Oh, the guitars, isn't it mostly the bass that's got low notes?
That's right. So you can do this, but it creates a lack of clarity at the bottom of the system. So definitely that should be plugged in, and the same with guitar too. That should be attenuated as well. The bass is okay. The computer we're not using. These three should be all attenuated, but again they've been played with. And of course these signals here are on. What's that lapel mic? That should be off as well. Computer can be on. So the next ones are the equalisers, and you can see the pictures here that sort of explain what these knobs do. So if they were up high, they'd be doing this sort of thing. They'd be boosting 12 hertz from 12 hertz is about there. So they're boosting it from 12 hertz up. So that sibilant sound you can hear much better. But what we find is, we don't really want to hear that sibilant because actually what happens is it takes over the system and distorts other sounds. For instance, the guitar is something that uses it, or the keyboard on occasion too, if it's got quite tinny sort of instruments. So we try to create what's called pockets in the sound. So if the sound's like this naturally, so should the music. So for instance, if we want to hear the guitar, try and shape so that other instruments don't use the frequency range the guitar uses. That's called pocketing. And so
is that done by the sound desk or the musicians?
Sound desk, always. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a bit hard here, to be honest with you, because the nature of the system is we just keep it flat. But this is just to give you a rough idea if you're using another system. Yeah, anyway. But that's the top end. The bottom end works the same as this limiter, just drops out that bottom end like that. This one's a little bit interesting. It's got two knobs. Now there's a graph here depicting what those two knobs do. One does shifts this way. So this was low frequency, that's high frequency. It shifts where that envelope is happening. And so I think that's what the graph's trying to show. If it had an arrow between the two, that would probably help, because as I pull this is the frequency here. If I pull it up there, then it's up this end. If I put it down there where it was before, it's that end. And at the moment it's dropping out.
What practical difference does that make to how it sounds?
So for instance, you speak it with quite a high voice. So what we find is we probably try and drop some of the more nasally aspects of your voice by reducing the frequency. So you probably notice, and it really should be the case, that this normally is about shaping reducing signals rather than increasing them. Okay, so that's the most useful way of creating a pocket, because you can actually shift the frequency to create the pocket wherever you want it. And it's got quite a high range, from 4 kilohertz, which is right up on the keyboard, all the way down to 120 hertz, which is quite low on the keyboard. So it's where you create the pockets, and you can that looks like there. It looks a bit like a pocket.
Yeah.
So in a way, that's what we're trying to do. Yeah. So that's the inputs from the Gorges. These are the outputs from the Gorges. This is where sound is being prepared to go into those speakers. Okay, those front of house speakers. One important thing to note here is that these are called, and we'll get to this in a minute. This is the section for the planes, and this says pre-fader, an auxiliary pre, and what that means is that it's not affected by that.
Yeah.
Everything's affected by the mute button, but not this. It's a pre-fader. In fact, that's pre-fader listening. That's right. I now remember what it means. Pre-fader listening. So if you wanted to hear that everything's even, you put them all on and you listen to them all together. And you might do that if you had all the singers and you just want to have a feel for, you've got them roughly even, and then I'll adjust it. So here's the lead singer, here's the backing vocalist, that sort of thing. Okay, so we've got our Gorge input, Gorge output. Deactivate, activate. I always actually mute the channels when I start the system. And there's a good reason for this. People who are plugging in can pop and crackle and have their systems not working. So let's get them all plugged in before we turn on. So particularly the guitars, because they're quite powerful. Keyboard's less of an issue because it's already plugged in, the same with the drums. And then these are the faders that prepare to send a mixed signal into the outputs. Okay. I've already gone through those steps. The planes. Now we just briefly talked about pre and post. You can see that here, pre-faders, post-faders. And there's a little sign here, vocal fold, instrument fold. Now, it's probably pretty obvious that the front foldbacks are for the vocals and the back ones are loosely for the instruments. Of course, if there's a guitar player who's playing singing and playing guitar, they probably want to hear the guitar in the vocal fold back. And let's have a bit of a look at what we've got here. Well, for instance, the lecterns, quite interesting that all the lecterns have got their fold backs on, because we would never have that, because it just creates issues at the front, so we turn that off. However, we've got them on full here for auxiliary 3 and 4. This is a special purpose. This box here, the Sennheiser, is actually the output to the portable speaker. So that's a Bluetooth connection to this. And it needs, because of the nature of the system, as much signal as it can. So anything we really want to turn up, we turn up high. So people are going to be playing with this because they don't really understand what they're doing. So these really only affect that box. So if they've been playing around like that, then they clearly don't really know what they're doing. These are meant to be up 4, and the rest are offs. Or if they're low, just
all the voice ones are the
that's right. That's right. I mean, when the band's playing, you can have a little bit of band. That's fine. Of course, when we've got
you generally hear the band through the window anyway.
That's true. I hadn't thought of that. And then the next, so going back to how the sound's set up for the musicians. That's where these two come in. Now, it's interesting. Why would that be dropped down on that channel so much? The vocal 1. I really don't quite understand why you wouldn't have these directed differently. For instance, we always have the auxiliary 1 set about there for the vocals. Apart from this one, there's a reason for that. Where's the bass player standing?
Oh yeah, right at the back.
That's right. So they need to actually hear it more in that one rather than the other one. So I'm just correcting them as we go. That one doesn't matter because the channel's off. This is the drums, so again, it doesn't need to come through the singers like that. It just needs to go into the back. The same with the keyboard. In fact, the keyboard probably doesn't need much at all. The guitar, again, probably depends on who's playing it, but I'd leave them like that. Same with guitar
Guitarists
too.
often singing.
Yeah, they are often singing, so give them a little bit in the front, a little bit in the back, and they'll figure it out as they go. And the bass player's really at the back, so we'll just do that. Computer doesn't need any fallback, and definitely not these wirelesses. I mean, it might be that the other congregation that was here was using them as vocal mics, and that's fair enough. They're allowed to do that.
They do. They have all the singers with wireless mics.
Yeah. Well, in which case they've changed them, but of course not changed anything back. I should mention there are extra inputs here. These little stereo inputs here. We can use them. For instance, in that diagram you had. Oops.
Sorry, it's all right.
Bit OHS. Don't hear that. What else have we got? You could have the keyboard plugging straight into them. Again, these inputs here are unbalanced, so we don't tend to use that because of the very nature of the system, and there's a whole bunch of interference. Just while we're on the planes, if you wanted to just hear what's coming out of the vocal foldbacks in the headphones, you can press this button and it will enable you to hear just the vocal foldback in the headphones. And the same with the instrument foldback. There's a little bit of work we can do here just for future reference to plug the computer in here. This cable's actually designed for that, so at some point we'll figure out how that works. These are the masters essentially, and I'll probably go through them in a tick to send out to the foldbacks. Let's just go there now. I think have you got any questions about how these fall?
No.
To just sum up, these are pre-foldback, pre-fader, post-fader. These are only are really working the Sennheiser. These are working the foldbacks at the front, and that's really the output to the auxiliary. In fact, that's the next slide. Output to the auxiliary is here. That's a closer look at it. This is where the stream happens, over here. And these are the physical outputs to them. So these run back through...
to the speakers.
Yeah, we might even go have a look. Let's go and have a look and just see where they all come back out. It's the same with the foldbacks. I think that there are channels on the actual snake, they're called channels A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
So you can see here, they're the two front of house, and they're actually the opposite. See how they're female here, male there, whereas the other's the opposite.
Because the sound's going the other way.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. And that's foldback 1, which is going to those over there. And the instrument foldback, and that's the vocal foldback, and that's the instrument foldback pointing into this particular amp here. Cool. All right. I think we've sort of covered our stream, albeit a little bit wonky in terms of the analogy, but that's the nature of these analogies.
No, I get it.
The last thing I want to do in this sort of like setup session is to talk a little bit about the basic procedure for turning things on and off. And I like this. This is cute because it's very simple. When you're turning the system on, turn the power on before any speakers. Make sure the speakers are all off. And the reason why the speakers should be all off is because they pop when the sound comes on. You just don't want that coming through the system. And also if there are any instruments that already, like we just had a whole bunch of things set up that shouldn't have been set up, they can be all rectified. So the procedure is basically turn the power on, turn the speakers on, then turn the instruments on, or plug the instruments in and then unmute them as you go. One important thing to think through too is that we don't want the musicians telling the sound person how it should sound at the front, because they can't hear it. They're all over there. And invariably I find that the musicians have turned up everything and adjusted everything here, and I'll go and turn them all off. And the reason why is because I'm the one who can hear what's balanced. I can hear that guitar is way too loud. I don't want that coming through my mix. We have to use a little bit of emotional intelligence in doing so. But that's an important step to get that mutual understanding between a sound person.
The reality is in a volunteer setup, often the musicians are having to set up without the sound person hearing it, so they have to have a go so they can actually do their practice.
Then that's a challenge, isn't it? Yeah. But then again, is there any reason why they need the front of house running?
I don't know whether they're doing it for the front of house or the foldback. What I'm saying is they're here on their own getting set up and practicing. So
Yeah. I mean, maybe in some ways, ideally, we could have it so that that's all set up and this is all turned off, ready for them to roll. There's ways of dealing with it. But yeah, it's always a bit of a challenge between sound person and musician, because musicians get, hang on, I can't hear myself. And that's an important thing to fix up first, which is again why I think it's important to turn this off, get everyone happy up there, as soft as possible, but with enough so that they can hear what's going on, and then we embellish it from the front.
So the City of Adoration asked me to try and help figure out why some of the microphones weren't coming through in the middle of the service. I'm like, well, there is a cacophony of noise. I can't begin to help you because you can't hear what's working and what's not.
That's a really good one. Why don't we actually park that one and go through it in the troubleshooting session?
Okay.
That'd be cool. Because I think what we could find is there's a way of fixing it.
Okay.
But it just takes a practice of the logical steps of, is the fault here, is the fault in the next point, just walking through the trail of it.
Okay.
Okay, that was the turning on, so power first, speakers, then instruments, then releasing them. Turning off is the opposite. The only thing that's specific to here, and this is dear to your heart, is the video. So we turn off the speakers, sure, we turn off the instruments first. The speakers can turn off first. If they turn off first, you can do whatever you want with the music, with the instruments, because they're already deactivated. But don't turn the power off until
The camera and computer are
the
finished.
camera and computer are finished. I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind of why I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Because it's all on the one power button.
I even found the model of the camera. That's pretty good. So, in summary, this is a basic page for how we do this. Just to sum up everything we've been through. We've got all of these channels muted. We plug in the instruments, whether they're via a direct input box or not, low impedance instrument, high impedance instrument, into here. Then we unmute, and then we start adjusting the foldbacks, including the masters, to the front of house pins, the foldback pins, the two different types, of course. And then we start playing with these panning, so those outputs from the gorges into the stream at the end, and that's what comes out. So that's not bad. The key question here, of course, is can you hear yourself sing as you listen to the band? If you can hear yourself sing, that's not too loud. It's not a bad rule of thumb. Better than getting a sounds, a dB meter. Can you hear yourself sing? If you can't, then it probably is the case it's too loud. And that means that people over time, like a couple of hours, will probably be having a bit of ringing ear going on. And it's not a good thing for a church to have. Last one, before we go to the next session, because the next session is practical, just a very quick fold-back problem. Often it's the case that someone will say, I can't hear myself. Guitar player, for instance. And they might, if they were able to articulate this, they would say, could I please have some more guitar 1, which is channel, what's that, channel 10? In auxiliary, this is AFO standing up at the musician. Yeah, that's right. And so the idea is to think horizontally. Which channel and which foldback is the vertical thinking. So I've just tried to create a basic tools. I mean, it is very basic. There's only 2 foldbacks. There are multiple channels. Think horizontally. Which channel, which foldback. Okay. Okay, well, that's the end of that session, and we'll take a break and move on to the practical one.